Okay, our last session of the day, we have actually three skills coaches, actually four skilled coaches. We have Kyle Pastupa. Kyle used to work in our office. He was involved in our development program for a number of years, and did an excellent job with us in our high performance program. He'll be moderating the session. We also have the three gentlemen. Not only are they good skill coaches in Manitoba, but these are some of the top people, I think, in the country. And Riley Dudar, Dave Cameron, and John Cara. So, and they've been involved in the development of skills. All three of them are actually played with the University of Manitoba Bisons at one stage. So, shout out to the U of M there. Excellent. Not only are they good people, they're very skilled. They provide an opportunity for some of the youth in our province to develop them to the levels that they possibly can. So that's excellent. So if we can just get the four of it, gentlemen, you can come up on stage there. Kyle's going to moderate this. He's going to walk them through a series of questions. If you have any questions that you want to ask, that might be helpful as well.
I'm Kyle. Like Peter said, I used to work in the Hockey Manitoba office. Now I'm on the board of directors as chair of junior hockey, and as he mentioned, also know these guys from previous when I worked at Hockey Manitoba. And now, most recently, where I see them a lot is with the Hockey Canada Skills certification process and different seminars that we get to take part in, and share ideas, see how things going, and just kind of again knowing them over a number of years, even prior to Hockey Manitoba. Played roller hockey against Johnny a long time ago. That was a lot of fun. Riley, known for a while again as well. Dave through the POEs and things like that. So it's kind of neat. Like everyone here has their own entity, business essentially, but there's a common respect and understanding that it's private sector, but there's reasons why we do what we do. We love the game. We love helping and trying to help kids get better, players get better, and not only kids, but there's some young men and young women that are young adults and pushing to be pros and Olympians, and all of us have had the opportunity to work with people at that stage as well. So we'll cover a few different topics here. First off, though, I'll ask each person just to do a brief intro here and a welcome. I'll start with Riley.
I don't like this part. Riley Dudar, grew up playing hockey in Winnipeg. Went on to U of M. I played there for 5 years. After I was a player, I stayed on as a coach for an additional 5 years, then got involved with Hockey Canada, did the skill certification. During that time, working with players as young as grassroots, all the way up to NHL, everywhere in between that. Got involved in the hockey management and scouting side. I was scouting for the Chicago Steel in the USHL, and then director of player personnel for the Winkler Flyers in the MJ. And then more recently took on the role of being the director of player development and a scout with the Brandon Wheat Kings in the WHL. I still play beer league hockey. I love it. I could play hockey every single day. I talk hockey every day. That's pretty much my job, my life. So I hope that this presentation or this talk can help you guys in your associations for any way possible. And if anyone has any questions after, before, whatever, I'm happy to chat.
Well, these chairs, if you guys look, I can't get my feet on the ground, so I don't know if I'm short or what it is, but these chairs are a little awkward. But my name's John Cara. I'm director of on ice and programming at the Rink Training Center. I played a year for the Phoenix Flames back in the day in Headingley, and then I lived on the wrong side of the highway, so they kicked me out to St. Eustache. I spent my time out in St. Eustache. I still tell people those are probably my fondest memories. We never had tryouts. We signed up and played, so we hoped that we could get together 12 players every year just to make a team. Sometimes we'd have 10. We hoped that somebody new moved to town so that we could put a team together. But lifelong friendships back in St. Eustache. I see Dicker's here today. Grew up chasing him around the rink, trying to keep up with them, the big man. But from there, I went and played in Portage with Central Plains for a couple of years, and then I went out to BC. Played in Penticton for a couple of years, and then the Western League for a couple of years. Came back home to U of M. Got to play with Riley for a couple of years. Missed Dave by a year. and then got into coaching. For me, the coaching side started right when I was about 15. I started working Edge of Excellence camps out of Gateway. And I remember my dad came and picked me up after the first day that I worked, and he asked me how the day went, and I said if I could do that for a living, that would be a dream job. So for me, the biggest reward was being able to see a player not be able to do something, and then through your direction, see them be able to succeed and be able to put those things together. So years later, for me, opportunity came up at the rink. I'd worked in Penticton for a couple of years. My wife's from there, so I'd spend my summers there. Opportunity came up to start with the rink. I had the opportunity to work with both these guys as well through the rink, and then just have grown from there. So worked in the MJHL with Selkirk, Steinbach as well, won a championship with them, and then the departed Winnipeg Ice, worked for them for a little bit as well, and done a lot of stuff with Hockey Canada. So really excited to be here, and hopefully can give you guys some insights into how we do things, and you guys can apply them into your associations when you go home. So pass it to Davey.
Hi, everybody. My name is Dave Cameron. I'm the skills coach for the Winnipeg Jets and the Manitoba Moose. I also oversee the Jets Hockey Development Program. We're based out of the Hockey for All Center now. Our building continues to change names, so it's now the Hockey for All Center. I grew up in Winnipeg and played my minor hockey in the south end of the city. And when I was 16, I went and played in the Western Hockey League and made the decision to kind of leave home at a younger age and be away. And it's probably one of the best decisions for me personally at the time to step away from everything that was going on in Winnipeg and have a fresh start and be challenged with the Western Hockey League. I was drafted and lucky enough to be drafted by Pittsburgh Penguins. I'd never played. I was injured before I got the chance to play, but came back to the U of M and had a good career at the University of Manitoba and got my degree in kinesiology and then started coaching after that. And the biggest thing for me with coaching was it let me stay part of the game, and I could continue to give back to younger players and do some different things with players. And then stepping up now is working with pro players a lot and having the opportunity to help players really work on details of their game and help them improve in areas that they need to improve in is the best part for me, that I get to do it every day. I tell my wife I've got the best job in the world, in a sense that I don't really work. I get to go have fun every day and coach and be with people that love the game and kind of can inspire them to play and do some different things that maybe they're not the best at. So it's a great thing, and hockey is a great thing, and I'm very fortunate to be a part of it.
All right, thanks guys for the intros. Yeah, we're gonna have to be handing off this baton here all evening now, but we'll make it work. We'll get into it with a little bit of topics here and keep going. We hope to have more of a candid discussion. We have a few points and streams of topics to start with, and I think at some point too, if we can open it to the floor for either a question or maybe some insight. So don't be shy when that opportunity comes as well. So guys, put this around your head here. We'll start with Riley. Just general, it's broad question, but we'll start kind of our stream of just where you feel the game's at today in terms of skills development into game application. Again, it's a pretty broad topic, but I'll let each of you just kind of touch on that to get us going. Riley?
Very broad topic. I think the game's great. I think it's awesome to watch at the pro level. And even at the younger level, the kids' games are way better than they were a few years ago. Really happy with the implementation of the cross ice. I feel when I first started my business, we were doing a lot of U9, U7 type stuff, and it was just the best player got the puck, skated all the way down the ice, and I had to do that for an hour. And that wasn't any fun at all. And now with the cross ice, there's so many more kids involved, and now we're seeing that trend going higher and higher where the kids just continue to get better. And the things that we're teaching 11-year-olds now, maybe 5-6 years ago, we were teaching that to 15, 16-year-olds. And so kids are just picking things up quicker. At the higher levels, the game is just so electric and so fast and so skilled at the NHL. Gone are the days where you have the fourth line of just slugs and goons out there. Now, some people like that, and that is a brand of hockey, but just the skill of everyone. If you can't play the game now, you're not going to be able to keep up. So I think the game's in a great place, and kind of forgot what the rest of your question was. But
Concussion. For me, on the side of the game, just building a bit on what Riley said, obviously creativity. I think that's probably the most amazing thing. If you watch some of the things that kids can do now and that they can perform in practice, those are things that we could never do when we were growing up. So I think it's pretty amazing to see the kids have the ability to be able to do those things. I think that one of the things that's starting to happen though is that there's a lot of manufactured players. So when we were growing up, it was the outdoor rinks. It was getting out there playing, putting sticks in the middle, figuring out a way to play games. I don't think you see that as much in kids anymore. I think a lot of them are, looking for direction all the time. They look on YouTube, they look at different things. So I think a big bridge for us is finding a way to almost encourage players to do that more. So giving them time to find ways to get creative on their own instead of us having to teach them every single aspect. But those are just a couple of things I see towards the game.
I was just going to say, it's funny Riley brought up the cross-ice stuff because I was in Calgary when they did the testing on that and they tried to get a bunch of data back. And one day they had a group of kids come in and play a full ice game. And what they measured was the shots on goal, the amount of passes, the downtime between whistles, and a whole bunch of other things. And then the next day, the same kids came back and played cross ice and they measured the same factors and same things. And the numbers on it were like ridiculous as far as how much more the kids played cross ice. And it was pretty impressive to see the reaction from the kids as well as the reaction from the coaches and the involvement of everybody in the cross ice game compared to the full ice game. So I like the fact that he brought that up. But with respect to the skill application from game to practice, I think is the big thing. And one of the things that we try to do is give players options in drills. So the drill doesn't look the same every single rep that kids do. And I think that what that does is it starts to simulate a game scenario where players have to make decisions and they have to think faster and they have to realize what's happening. But I had a group today on, guys getting ready for Moose training camp that starts on Sunday. And it's just a way to get them thinking about what they're going to do in the games. And I think when you have options in the drills, the connection to the game becomes a lot quicker. And that's one of the things that I think when players have trouble or they're not doing well, and it's because they're taught one thing all the time. And that when that one thing doesn't happen in games, they start to get frustrated. And so when they understand options and they can do things, it makes it easier for them to make the connection from practice to games. And that's one thing that we've tried to do a lot is to give players more options in their drills, hopefully to connect the game to practice a little quicker.
So I remember what the rest of your question was the game application part of it. And I think it's getting better, but it's not where it needs to be. I think a couple years ago, and even now, it's all skill. And I own a skill company, and we all work in skill companies. And I don't think that it should all just be about skill. We still have to play the game. You still have to learn the game. You still have to learn how to apply those games. But I think the real big push on the skill stuff and practicing skill, it needs to happen at the minor hockey level, and we need to continue doing that. But we also need to progress that, and we need to add it into game situations more. And I think it's starting, but it's not where it needs to be. And if we rewind 10 years, skills weren't where they needed to be. And now they're getting there and we're there. And now we need to all take that to another level and still work on the skills, but be better at applying it to the games for the younger players.
Thanks, guys. So kind of adding on to this now here, Riley brought up a good point where maybe it's not where it needs to be, but it's in the right direction. I think all of them have kind of agreed to that part. What are some common deficiencies you guys are seeing? Let's use the AAA, let's call it elite, AAA, like U18 level, U15, like kind of draft eligible for Western League, junior A, Western League. What are kind of the most common deficiencies you guys are seeing in those kind of elite players? And we're going to bring that back to a grassroots level later, but just kind of focusing on that age group right now. I'm going to start.
Biggest deficiency, I would say, is backhands. Could attribute that. I mean, not going to tell a coach how to coach ever. There's people out there that think players should never make a backhand pass. It happens multiple times in every single hockey game. It's also 50% of your blade. So I like to say, are you ever going to have a carpenter come over and work on your house and tell him to bring 50% of his tools over? It's probably not going to happen that way. However, a coach wants to coach their team, that's fine, but we need to make sure that kids can play the game on both sides of the puck or both sides of their blade. That's something that I see at that level as the biggest deficiency.
Yeah, so building on what Riley said, I mean, I think passing is a huge thing for players. Oftentimes you drop a passing drill, a basic drill, and you'll see players struggle at it, but oftentimes it's because of their focus. So I think passing is a huge thing, and finding ways to get players engaged in that. The other thing would be at that level is just on ice awareness and reads. So coming back to that manufactured side of things and the options that Davey touched on, you have to find ways within drills, if it's AAA or junior level that we're talking about, that, we've got to find ways to increase that awareness for players, increase their reads, not manufacture it, put them in situations where they've got to be able to figure it out a little bit. And that comes from those smaller A games that Riley's touching on a little bit there as well. So those would be big deficiencies for him.
I've got three. I think the first one is skating. And I challenge players all the time with, working on skating to get better, not just working on skating. So they've got to strengthen the area that they're working on. The second one is passing, like John mentioned, but I feel like players just don't pass the puck hard enough. And if you're ever at a Jets practice or a Moose practice, it's shocking how hard guys pass the puck. So that's my second one, is trying to challenge players to pass the puck harder. And my third one is what I call spatial awareness. So just having an understanding of where pressure is coming from, who's your support, where should the puck go, and that comes from good shoulder checks and having their head up and scanning the ice and all those things. But I think having a good spatial awareness presence is a big deal. So those would be my three.
Hey, thanks, guys. So none of them mentioned anything about like there's gaps in the 1-3-1 forecheck and all the breakout and the D zone coverage. So it's all these things that compile and relate to having successful team tactics, team systems. So again, what happens with skills coaches a lot, and you guys maybe would agree, because we do skills, it's like, well, they're not actually like coaches though. They don't know how to coach a team. But when you look at it, we're able to break down everything and put them in compartments to how to build up essentially a team. When you look at kind of the 3 or 4 topics that were mentioned here, it all ends up adding up to, like John said, that player that they just play kind of that gamer. Those things with spatial awareness, huge. The read and react skills. Of course, we're going to get into skating as well. The passing. And I think one thing is there's 3 of us, or 3 guys here, call me the 4th. If we did this panel and asked that same question with kind of our colleagues when we go to Hockey Canada skills seminars, they're pretty much going to say this exact same 3 things, 4 things across the country. So it's not unique to Manitoba, but how we solve it, I hope, will become unique in how we start solving these things in our province. Of course, we're sharing ideas and working across the country in some of the things that we do, but I really want to be able to see our associations, your associations, really start to be able to address these things so that year to year we can just keep building, right? It's a huge process that it can seem overwhelming because everyone has their own idea. We have over 100 associations and 10 regions, and everyone has their own idea. But yet we keep having these conversations up here amongst ourselves, amongst other coaches across the country, and it still ends up being like these same 3 or 4 things that keep coming up. So which tells me not only in Manitoba but across the country, we're just not addressing what keeps coming up. And it's the coaches that you guys have in place, that's who has to really be able to help bridge the gap here. Good comment by John, where hopefully we get to a point where like we don't need to see a kid every day. We're trying to build them so that they should have the tools to be able to go deliver without having someone right on their shoulder as a reminder. There's a great for a business model to have a kid keep coming back to you, but then it's actually not great for business because that kid is not really thriving on their own. Like, and that's part of what I think we're all trying to achieve with our athletes that we work with. We'll go into more of the youth now, guys, and let's like focus a little bit more on, say, your thoughts on the gaps in delivery as to why maybe there's at the grassroots level that ends up leading to some of these deficiencies, whether it's at junior or even like a U13 level. So kind of talking about that progression from age group to age group as we go. Just your thoughts on what you see. You guys all work with associations in some way. You obviously work with athletes at all various levels. But just some ideas, some thoughts on what are the gaps right now, and some ideas on how we, as Hockey Manitoba, improve on some of these deficiencies we're seeing.
Dean mentioned it. I think fun has a lot to do with it. And the way that we teach and the way that we approach practice for a child, we have to make it fun for that child. Because if it's not fun, the kid's never going to want to come back. And we also have to remember that their attention spans are extremely short. I'll never forget, and I tell this story, that the first time that I was ever doing a U9 session, I thought, I'm going to go in there, I'm going to teach this kid how to skate perfectly the first time. I want you right here. This is where I want your leg. I want it on the 90-degree angle or push out on a 45, blah, 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 blah. Any questions? About 20 hands go up. And I go, yeah, Johnny. And he goes, I'm going to a birthday party later. And I was like, that's awesome. Any other questions that have to do with hockey? Yeah, Susie. She goes, why is there a 5 on the scoreboard? I don't know. Great question. Let's go for a skate. Just threw my plan out the window. We got moving right away. And so he also talked about the horseshoe drill, and I call those predetermined pattern drills. And there's so many drills that are exact same as the horseshoe. They're just drawn in a different way. So we have to make sure that we're making it fun for the kids. And if they're having fun, they're going to want to learn and they're going to want to work on their skills. And so to me, I think that's the biggest deficiency is we as adults, we have to make sure that we're creating an environment for children, not an environment for adults.
On my end, I think one of the biggest things is just the ability for coaches to be able to analyze and break down exactly what a player is struggling with and finding a way to teach them. I think a lot of coaches don't have the ability to do that, to be able to look at a skill and be able to say, okay, this is where this player struggles. I think the most common thing you hear with players when they're learning how to skate is you want them to bend their knees all the time. Okay, so we're going to yell at players all the time to bend their knees, but a lot of times they're restricted by their skates. And a lot of times coaches don't know how to analyze that or how to do that. Same thing with puck handling. Two biggest tools, your skates and your stick. Okay, so you're looking at a player, they're struggling to be able to stick handle. Mom and dad cut their stick. Well, they're not going to cut it because they want it to last for 2 years. The price of sticks now. So now you're looking at a stick that's up to a kid's forehead, and you're getting on him for stick handling and why he can't keep his eyes up. Well, he doesn't even have a chance. He or she, I should say. But I think a big part of it is that analysis portion. So from a Hockey Manitoba standpoint, I think there's a lot of clinics that they put out, through guys like us and other guys that, coaches can attend, whether it's video seminars. There's tons of resources online right now that I think are provided. Obviously, it takes a lot of time and passion, but I think as coaches and as associations, encouraging your coaches to get involved in those more and constantly find ways to learn and analyze, why a player is struggling. And a lot of it comes from their skates and their stick. So those are big things for me.
I think one of the biggest things is that if a coach doesn't know something, and there's no fault in not knowing, but if they don't know it, then they don't teach it. And that's something that's hard to get through a season if you're not working on skating, you're not working on puck control, you're not working on passing, because the coach isn't great at it. That's a hard part for the players then to make sure that they're continuing to get better. So like John mentioned, I encourage coaches to reach out and to do their part to make sure that they're aware of some of the deficiencies in players so that they can help. And I think that as players are in sessions or practices and they're working on different things, they have more fun when they're getting challenged, and they see things that maybe they haven't seen before, and they get to work on new areas, and they get to do different things, and they get to, like Riley said, practice their backhand passing. Those things are hugely important in the game, from a beginner to the next level of NHL stars. But they need to work on those things. And if you're not comfortable demonstrating something, there's lots of minor hockey players in your area who can demonstrate. Bring them out to practice and ask them to demonstrate for you, because I think that those things go a long way as you're developing players over the course of a season.
It's great points, guys. I think, there's going to be no shortage to pick on for deficiencies and how we solve them. But I think, again, the purpose of these types of things and the purpose of having this discussion is to not to pick on volunteer coaches and the delivery model, et cetera. It's to make sure that we raise, what we see as people who are in the rink every day and work with players every day. Quick question though, guys. Where do you want that stick to be cut?
I think it's a personal preference. I like mine in around here. I think it's different for everyone. I'd say personal preference. I think when you're watching a kid, if Johnny mentioned, like if he's not bending his knees, take a look at his hockey stick. If his hockey stick's really tall, that's probably a possible reason why he's not bending his knees. So personal preference for me.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of factors that go into that. Again, talking about skates, how much steel they have on their skate. You're going to see players at younger ages, mom and dad are going to buy used skates again, and they've probably got about that much steel. Then they replace the steel, and all of a sudden the stick length is out. So I think it's definitely personal preference. But for my son, when we do it at home, off the ice, it's just usually at his nose.
I always look for sticks, like Riley said, it's personal preference, but somewhere between the lips and the nose, and really how a player's stick handles is going to help determine that. So I look for the blade to be flat on the ice, so the middle of the blade is touching the ice, not the heel, not the toe, but the blade is flat, gives them the most contact between their blade and the puck. So that's kind of the guideline is where players are skating and where they're handling the puck and all that stuff. So there's lots of different factors that can determine stick length.
How about you, Kyle?
Agree with all you. It's preference, and I would say between all of us here, we're probably saying it's somewhere in this range where it's not really taller than your nose off the ice, and it's probably not under your chin either. Again, you're that analysis part is a really good point. That's something that I feel like we're probably all really good at right away, is picking out, but maybe mom and dads don't really realize it. Got a question there?
Yeah. Right. So personal preference, that 6-7-year-old kid, kind of just.
Yep. Yep.
You don't have to show that in the stick. It's more or less pretty clear, but.
It's a great point. Yep. Yeah. So that was a great point. I was actually going to get into that. I have a little story related to that. At a U9 level last year, had a player sticks here on his skates, and he cannot receive a puck, struggles to handle the puck, and he's a younger player in a multi-age category, playing A1, which is the highest in the city, so it's pretty good level for those kids. But he's struggling to get touches as is, and then when it does come to him, he struggles to handle it because of exactly that, right? So had the discussion with mom and dad. It had more to do with not wanting to battle the kid because he preferred it. At the end of the day, is like, well, would you prefer to like have the long stick or prefer to be able to have quality touches? And it's just one of those things. It never got solved. But for me personally, and these guys can add in, like, again, we had a range of here, like we're not out a ton. It's got to be around those lips when you're on the skates, and like just as coaches in the room here, like that's something you can immediately address, like your first practice essentially, and just talk about it and have the kind of conversation with parents and just explain how it's critical when you're 6-7 years old just getting started. It's like it's no different with your skates. You should not, I hope, not have skates that are 2 sizes too big for you, because that's also going to be a detriment. So you could debate on being smaller skates, but if you're Paul Coffey, that old story. But you know, the tools. Riley had a great analogy there, right? You need those tools to be working for you. It's a very complicated game. There's a lot of moving parts. So why make it harder is basically my theory. Did we have a question there?
Bring up a stick, let them try a bunch of different things.
You could do that. Absolutely.
You might have to leave. Show them. It works better. Should be under code provided.
That's a great thought. But I'm glad you brought that, because I love talking about sticks just because of the technology, and like it changes the way you shoot, where it flexes, your lie, all that, the curve, all that kind of stuff. I'll get to that. So at that age group, I would probably even say shorter than lips. I would probably go down to like your chin. Just reason being, it's just an easier tool to use. It gets you lower to the ice, so it might help with them bending their knees a little bit more and getting lower. Now he's going to grow out of that pretty quickly. And when you think back, like all of us grew up on the outdoor rinks or mini sticks in minor hockey tournaments in the hotels, and you're playing with tiny little sticks. It's just an easier tool to handle and might be less intimidating for a 6-year-old. Like I said, we have to get in the minds of children, not of adults. And so for those age groups, I might even go smaller, like chin or below chin. I don't know if you guys had any there. And that's a great idea. If minor hockey associations could buy a bunch of sticks that just get turned over every year, like the kids aren't going to break sticks at 6 and 7 years old, and you can just give them to the parents. Yeah, that's a fantastic idea. That's a great idea.
It's just like that. It's just an innovative thought, and just it's so simple, and it's just like it just somehow doesn't come up sometimes. And just take ideas like that and run with them, in my opinion. And some people will be fine just to, oh yeah, thanks, coach. Well, we'll cut the stick. But yeah, if they're stuck on that, sure, find them an alternate to borrow, or usually kids have spares even at 6, 7 now. Let them borrow someone else's that's similar size, same hand, hopefully. We'll get into skating, guys, because that's going to be probably a big one here. We talked about skates as tools, things like that. I guess let's keep with the grassroots level. That's 6, 7, even 8, 9-year-old level. What are main priorities? Johnny already touched on one there with the knees. But what are main priorities when developing skating? And again, this is broad too. I should preface that because everyone's body is a little different. Dean's presentation, physical literacy matters. So depending on the stage of development that a child is in, with just their physical literacy may really affect, it will affect their skating ability and their functionality to be on skates and perform. So I think one big thing is just we can't cookie cutter everything with skating, but I'll let these guys speak on that a little bit deeper and how we best improve skating and develop good skaters.
So these guys are more of the skating guys than myself. But if we're talking about the younger ages, again, Hockey Canada talks about the ABCs, agility, balance, coordination. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just find more fun ways to work on agility, balance, and coordination, whether it's playing soccer or playing tag or anything like that. That would be my answer for the younger kids, not to reinvent the wheel for what's already been put together. Just find a more fun way to do it. These guys probably have a more technical answer.
Much more. Obviously balance. I mean, everybody talks about balance, edges, but one of the things we focus on is weight awareness. So just feeling where the weight is in your skates. And these are all things that players can literally get on the ice and do. They don't have to do them moving. Even just stepping onto the inside and the outside edges, being able to shift your weight to your toes, shift your weight to your heels, just getting them a little more comfortable with that. But for us at our intro ages, so our learn to skates, etc., those 3 to 5-year-olds, it starts off the ice. So even before they get on the ice, we do 10 to 15 minutes with them off the ice of just getting balanced on their skates, getting a feeling for it, because you put yourself on the ice and you try to do those things right away. And that's what a lot of parents and coaches will do. We'll get players skates, we'll go right to the rink, we'll put them right on the ice. and they have no confidence in that situation. So get them off the ice. They can wear their skates around at home. They can work on the rubber just off the ice, and they can work at their balance there before they go on the ice. So you don't have to waste your time by jumping on the ice with players. You can do it off the ice, especially at those young ages when they're first learning that balance and stability.
That's a really good question, because I think back, Riley and I were in Calgary a couple years ago, and we were shooting some skating stuff, and it was like, no, it's got to be easier. No, it's got to be easier. No, it's got to be easier. And it ended up being like really, really simple, really basic skating movements. But the intention is to give players the opportunity to feel what their inside edge felt like, and feel what their outside edge felt like, and feel what a stride felt like, and feel what body position felt like, just to give them a good understanding of what they needed as players. And I think that's something that we stress a lot, is giving players the opportunity to work on something really specific and really detailed. And as they do that, they get better at it. And then as they get better at that, they can move on to something different. But everything for me and for us as skating coaches comes back to being balanced. So when they're feeling like they're doing something right, we always ask them, do you feel balanced? Yes. Okay, great. That's how you should feel. And as they get better and they get stronger and they get faster, you start to see that kind of confidence grow. So those are some things that I think that are the benefits of the skating work.
Riley's probably the best skater out of all of us. So he didn't have the most technical answer, but he's a great skater. So would you guys agree? You beat him in a race? Yeah. What about edge work? He's the best edge work guy then. Yeah, he's good in the corners. Why do you think it is that maybe coaches, and Dave, you may have led into this one with one of your other answers already, but why is it that coaches maybe don't spend enough time on this in practice? And I would say maybe especially at the older ages. What's your thoughts?
Another very interesting question. Dave already talked about it, that some coaches might not know how to teach a certain skill, so they just avoid it. I think it's just human nature to stay away from that kind of stuff. But I always hear like, oh, we don't have enough time. We got to get our forecheck in, or you got to get your breakout in, or you got to get not enough time. We got to get everything in. So that's a fantastic question. I think it could be a long debate, and I think it could get pretty philosophical with the Canadian brand of hockey and where we need to be and what we need to be focusing on. But yeah, I would kind of steal Dave's answer by just saying, I think if someone doesn't really know how to teach shooting, and we'll just use the horseshoe drill because everyone knows what it is, but the coach draws on the board, go here, pass here, skate all the way down, take a shot, with zero explanation on what kind of shot or how to shoot or things to think about while they're shooting. It's just skate down, take a shot on the net. And if that coach doesn't have any basics on shooting, how are they supposed to teach that? And they're not going to stand up at the whiteboard and make themselves look like an idiot in front of all their team trying to explain something that they don't know. So I think it's just it's great that we have this many people in the room, and there's, like John said, there's lots of clinics from Hockey Manitoba. We do a lot with Hockey Winnipeg. Just getting more people involved and just talking about it, and just not being intimidated to say I don't know, or what's a couple tips here, or what's a couple tips there, and just dropping the ego and just being able to say, I can learn something. Let's have a discussion about it. How can we all make our shooting better, for example? And I think us just being able to say that as adults, to work together to make sure that if we are doing that horseshoe drill or whatever drill, that we can say, okay, how can I add teaching a shot into this? And if you're a coach that can't really demonstrate, pick the best player on your team to demonstrate. Look at how Scotty shoots here. Watch his right arm. See what his right arm does here. Give them little cues like that, and put some of those players in that position. They're going to feel like $1 million in front of their teammates, and you don't look like an idiot in front of everyone if you can't shoot. So I think it goes both ways.
I think a lot of it comes in those smaller games and little games that you can play with players. So even if it's British Bulldog or it's tag on the ice, I know with my son's team we play a ton of tag, but I think the part with adding those types of some simple games like that is being able to analyze what each of those games brings to the table. So for tag, educating players on what tag brings to the table, edge work, agility, speed and quickness out of turns. If it's British Bulldog, again, same thing. you're putting them in these fun type of games that they play at school or gym class. We talked about gym class before, how gym class is so fun. It's the same thing that you want to create on the ice. And it's not that you're tricking players, it's that you're putting them in situations with games that they love to play and have fun, and you're educating them through their skating. It doesn't have to be that you're breaking down every technical element. So all of us as coaches can do that and think of some of our favorite games that we did when we were learning how to skate. Those are still some of the best games that people use, and they're used at all levels. You'll see NHL teams play tag to start the day. So there's lots of games out there, and I think it's not that you can't do that. It's being creative and finding those games and what those games bring to the table for kids, and that's where the fun's going to happen, and they don't even know they're learning it, and they're doing it. So that'd be the big thing for me.
I think one of the things that happens is coaches get kind of preoccupied with winning, and they want to work on things that are going to help them win, as opposed to working on things that are going to help their team get better. And I think back to when we work with teams, and so we ask the coaches for what they want to work on in every session. And there's always coaches that I get an email from that says, we want you to teach our power play. And I'll say to them in an email back, I'll say, well, we don't teach your systems, but what I can do is I can teach the skills that are related to a power play and hopefully get your power play functioning at a higher percentage. So we can teach puck movement, we can teach support, we can teach awareness, we can teach shooting from the point, we can teach deflections, we can teach rebounds, we can teach puck pursuit, we can teach a lot of different things, but the power play is up to you as a coach. And that's one thing that I think sometimes happens is coaches focus so much on winning that they forget about the development aspect. So, my advice to you as coaches and association representatives is to remind your coaches that, as players get better, their overall team gets better. And when you're focusing on practice, think about specific things that you need to work on, and think about specific areas you want to work on, and add those into your practices, and find different ways to play small area games and do some things that bring those out in players, because that's how your team gets better, is through practice. And as players get better, like I mentioned, your team gets better, and all of a sudden you start to see some success. So, but it all starts with practice for me.
I think that's where the debate could go on the hockey philosophy is like, does working on your forecheck, does that help you win more than working on your skills or working on the skills of the power play? Like, what do you think of that? Like, does the system of the power play matter more than the skill of the players on the power play, or vice versa? Or is it a blend of the both?
That's a really good question. I think the structure is a big thing, but the skill of the players starts to see things happen faster. I think that when players can do things at a really high level, then the combination of the two should start to show. But that's a good point.
I think that's that instinct thing. Same thing. Like if you create your drills the right way, you're going to create instincts. So I know even my son's team, like we've gone through U7, U9. He's at U11 now, but like last year, teams we played against early on in the year at U11, they're working on forechecks and stuff like that. At U11, we didn't do any of that stuff because for me, it was about encouraging the kids to use their instincts. So figure it out a little bit, because you watch players as they play, they're going to figure the game out. You don't have to give them every single thing. And a lot of times that's what we're creating within this next kind of wave of players is we got to tell them every single aspect of what they have to do, where they got to move, where they got to stand. Put them on the ice, they'll figure it out. Like they really will. If you watch them play, they'll figure it out. So
I like to get outside hockey as much as possible. And I read Phil Jackson's book, legendary NBA coach. He won 11 NBA championships, and he was very open. He said, I run the triangle offense. Very open about that. Every single team knew he run the triangle offense, but he said, I can get my guys to run it better than anybody else. And so with how he practiced was getting everyone to buy in more, teaching everyone the little details of the triangle offense. Where do I want your toes? Where do I want your head looking? Where do I want your eyeballs looking? Where are your hands supposed to be? All that kind of stuff. So I think if we work on the skills, I could think the structure and the system kind of takes care of itself. I think you need to work on the little minute details with each player as best as you can within the system, and the little skills within the system. That's going to help them figure it out in the long run.
I I agree with that, and I think it's just very simple. So, Dave, that question about working on the power play. So you ask that coach who's on your power play, they're probably going to have units, and it's going to be the more skilled guys. So, um, the third and fourth line are technically less skilled. They're not in those situations. So guess what? Like that to me answers itself. Like if someone's more skilled, they're going to have more opportunities. So we have to make sure that we put and that's what's going to help them win in the end. It's skill, and at a national league level, like again, that's partly entertainment as well and things like that. But those are grown men, fierce competitors, 200 pounds, with contact, all that. That there's so many other intangibles at that level that we can't compare to when we're talking about kids. But at the end of the day, that skill will prevail, right? And Riley said it like the first line here, like the days are gone of the fourth line kind of slug and enforcer, and there's still very physical hockey out there. Vegas would be a really good example who won. Very physical team, but play fast. So I think that answers in itself. But at the end of the day, again, associations like having a way to quantify or monitor what's happening in your practices. It's your teams, your practices. Yeah, you've assigned your coaches. But there's always seems to be a gap in kind of either accountability or maybe confidence for boards to kind of monitor because maybe some coaches have more experience than the people that are putting them in place. So those dynamics are tricky. I understand that, but nevertheless, it's something to make sure that we're conscious about moving forward. Staying on the topic of somewhat of skating, but kind of I guess going off a little bit. Two-parter here, guys. At a certain point, we're just worried about competent skating because hockey sense, passing, those skills will be more important. Yes or no?
Where's the second part? I'm a big believer in hockey sense, so I'd say be competent in skating and then work on hockey sense.
I was a great practice player. It didn't get me very far, so couldn't put it together in a game. So I could skate really well. You'd watch me skate on the ice, and I looked pretty good, but I couldn't do it in games. So, I think with that side of it, building on what Riley said, like you've got to find ways to get players to be able to understand and how to put that together. I think you can watch a guy in warm up and think that he's one of the worst players on the ice, but he could be the best player in a game. So gameplay is a huge part of that.
I think back to I was playing in a professional game, and it was training camp, and a guy came in the room, and he was short, he was overweight, he was not in shape, and I looked at this guy and I thought, there's no way this guy is competing for the same team that I'm trying out for. And we went out in the first game, and he had 7 points in the first game, and he wasn't a good skater, but he could really play. And he's now a coach, and he's coaching at a very high level. But it started for me to realize the importance of understanding things and doing things and being in the right spots at the right time on top of the skating. And I'm a big believer in skating, and I work on skating a lot, and I work with a lot of players on skating. But they have to be able to skate the game, and they have to be able to play, because they can't just skate. And so when we start to be able to put things together, then we start to see some players develop. And that to me is the exciting part.
Great example, that would be Winnipeg guy Mark Stone. About 10 years ago or so, I had him on the ice. We were using the NHL all the time. We were doing edge work. And I guarantee you all coach kids that were better at edge work than this guy in the NHL, but just won a Stanley Cup, captain of the team, because he has hockey sense at the highest level. He skates well enough to compete and play in the game, but his hockey sense prevails in the end.
Great point, Riley. And then second part, I didn't throw it out because I didn't want you to forget. So I was hoping that's what the answers were going to be. That certainly my thought, my philosophy. Now, second part of that, how do we create environments that obviously address making sure skating's at the competent levels, probably especially at the younger ages? What are we doing to make sure that we're creating environments for better spatial awareness, better read and react, just that gamer mode mentality.
So smaller games, and we call them live situations, where as coaches we can manipulate different scenarios in games that we can make a game out of it, and put the kids in those situations where they got to make decisions under no pressure. We vary the level of pressure, so sometimes it's heavy, sometimes it's light. Have different options for them, and just put them in situations where they have to think more as opposed to the predetermined pattern drills, and then coach them up while they come off the ice and focusing on just like one thing at a time. Like, we could correct a million things, but the kid, again, he's just playing, or she, they're having fun. So we have to make sure that we're still promoting that fun and giving them positive things that they can correct. And I'm a big believer that hockey sense can be taught. And I think one of the prerequisites is through puck control. And the example that I use is, if kid's skating around on the ice, his head's down, he's trying to figure out how to handle this puck, makes a play, comes off the ice, coach says, oh, you could have done this or could have done that, could have done this. Kid's looking at you like, what's this guy talking about? I was looking at the ice the whole time. Versus a kid who can play the game like this, makes a play, goes off the ice, coach says, oh, you could have done this, could have done this. And the kid goes, oh, okay, that makes sense. And then aggregate that over their entire hockey career. That's a lot of learning that was either gained or lost. Now you have an achievement gap between that player and another player who will never ever catch up because they've spent their whole hockey career looking down at the puck. And I don't think skating around cones is the answer to improve the puck control, but playing in those confined areas and those small area games, or creating live situations where we could put them under pressure, where they have to make decisions. And as coaches, we apply context to what we want them to do. That's how you develop the puck control skills, and that's how you develop the hockey sense that can hopefully stick with kids over time. And again, aggregate that over every practice that they do for their entire hockey career, and we're making a lot of kids smarter.
For me, there'd be two things. I feel like a lot of the kids now, as they're coming up, it's a lot different than when we were growing up. I remember, growing up outside the city, every Saturday night, it was a huge night to watch hockey, watching Hockey Night in Canada. And you get once a year that you get all the highlights together, and that was Rock'em Sock'em. You get to watch that every year, and you'd play that over and over in the VCR. Now kids can just go online and they can look up every highlight. I know my son does it. He's watching YouTube shorts and he can watch those over and over. I don't think they sit there and watch hockey enough. And I think it's through all levels. Guys aren't watching hockey anymore and sitting there through a whole game because their attention spans are so poor. So as parents, as associations, encouraging players to just watch hockey. Even at your local rinks, if you got senior teams, like the senior game should be the biggest thing for kids to go and watch. And get there and watch hockey. They don't do it enough. The second thing for me would, coming back to that fun aspect, obviously, my son's going through the aspects of this. My daughter's on the figure skating side, but for us, it's creating that fun aspect all the time. So we do a lot of stuff within our practices where if we're teaching skating, we'll teach skating first. We'll do it. We know we've got them locked in for about 5 to 10 minutes max. We'll teach skating for 5, and then we'll do a game. So we'll play tag. What's the next thing we want to do? We want to do puck control, then we create a competition around that. Could be a game of keep away. Jump to your next thing, passing, teach them a little bit of passing, then you do shuttle passing with them, turn it into a competition. So more of that incentive-based or constraint-based type training where you're creating incentives, you're creating competition, you're going to force players to do that. So for me, it's that type of training as well as just starting to watch the game a lot more and challenging them to literally sit there. No electronics. You got to sit there and you got to watch. You got to watch a whole game. It's the same thing with movies. We start a movie, we don't like it. What do? We switch to the next one. We got millions on Netflix we can choose from. So the attention spans are so low. So finding a way to get them to watch hockey again would be a big thing.
One of the biggest things that I try to do is I use a concept that I call creating unpredictable paths. So giving players drills that challenge them to think and challenge them to react and challenge them to do something different. And then we add pressure, and ultimately the goal is for them to be able to beat the pressure, and the player who's pressuring is to be able to stop them. So, we've got to figure out a way that we can continue to challenge players and get them thinking about the game, through what they're doing in practice. And that's one of the things I try to do is different sets of drills that make them think. Sometimes I get yelled at by the NHL guys and the American Hockey League guys that the drills are too hard. But I tell them, I say, guys, I want guys to think. I want them to react. I want them to have an idea of what they're doing, because when they get on the ice in a game, they've got a whole bunch of information that they need to take in. and they need to make decisions. And when I can get them making decisions in practice, it becomes a lot easier to do it in a game. So that's one of the biggest things I try to do.
Perfect. Thanks, guys. We're about just over 5 minutes here, so we're closing up soon. I'm gonna give each of you one question each. I'm gonna tell them to you now. Try not to forget, Riley. Just kidding. You're gonna go first anyway. Dave, yours is gonna be what led to the explosion of the private skills industry. So you can think about that a few minutes. John, yours is going to be, is there a trend for overtraining right now? Meaning, are kids doing too much on the ice? I'm not talking about off-ice training. You can maybe mix that in there if you want, but just maybe doing too much or too many sessions in a day, etc. And Riley, yours, how important is video in teaching today's generation of athlete? I'll let you start, Riley.
I actually really like John's question. That's something that, yeah, we trade. Video, I that's a big part of my job now. It's I have so many guys just asking for video, and they love seeing it. They love seeing other guys doing it. The NHL guys are asking, like Roman Josi, Victor Hedman. Those are the guys. Those are the D that everyone's asking for. It's like, can you send me how he goes back to pick up a puck? Where are his feet on this? It's the little details that they're asking, and so video, I think, is just, it's so paramount that you need to have it. I think as in minor hockey, kids can go home, like John said, and watch it on YouTube, and don't expect any volunteers to have, like, I take an iPad on the ice every single time because I'm a clip person. I need to show someone clips. I don't know how I remember them all, but like we'll be watching something and I'll be like, okay, I got a good Kucherov clip to show here because this is going to help that player get better. And now it's not my opinion. Like, I never played in the NHL, so I don't have that with some of the NHL guys that I work with, but I have a video reel of it happening in their league multiple times. And that's why we're going to work on it. And then that's how you get the buy-in. And then that's how you can show the correction. And that's how those guys want to learn. So I think video is crucial. Going back in my previous comments about coaches not maybe being confident in teaching something, there's so many resources for you guys now online where you can just take your phone onto the ice. It's not wrong to get your phone out on the ice and show kids some video, whether it's the Hockey Canada app or a YouTube video or whatever that you want them to see. Or a lot of people have iPads now. You could bring that out on your own, or you can send in Team Snap. If you guys are a coach of a team, you can send a link over your Team Snap or any other way that your team communicates, for a link to a YouTube video or a link to a drill on Hockey Canada's website. Hey, everyone, check this out. This is what we're going to work on today. Or, hey, Johnny, this is what you need to work on your own on the outdoor rinks or whatever it is. So I think video is so crucial. That's how kids learn these days. Kids that are 9 years old have phones now, which is bonkers to me, but they're on their phones, and that's how we need to learn how to communicate with them. So I think it's very important.
I got post-concussion, so this is good that I'm able to remember this. But so mine was about overtraining, I think, right? Yeah, too much hockey. I don't think that I think there's a couple ways to answer that. I think the first thing is it's our job as associations and as coaches, same thing as it is in our industry, to step up for kids when we need to. So, I remember we were talking when we were first getting going in the industry. One of the parents said, well, he loves it. He's here all the time. He loves it. And Mike Keane, one of our owners, made the comment, lots of kids love candy, but we step in and tell them when they've had enough. So, I think that's a big part for us, is to step in. Not every kid's going to want to be on the ice all the time. So we've got to protect them. I've had kids, when we've been on the ice before, say thank you for saying something to their parents just because they couldn't keep up and they couldn't say it themselves. So our job is to protect them and step up. So I think that's a big part of the overtraining. The second part of it is, I touched on it before, is just that overtraining in a controlled aspect. So kids are constantly running from session to session. They'll run to a session with Dave, with me, and Riley. They'll do it in one day. You'll see kids going from all these different trainers. I think that we think back to the outdoor rinks. We spent hours on the outdoor rinks when we were there. That wasn't considered overtraining. We'd go to the rink. You know, I grew up in the country in St. Eustache. Dad had opened the rink. I'd skate there for the day while he did stuff around the rink. It's the same thing now. I go back to St. Eustache, Dickers open up the rink. The kids are there skating. You look at the best players now, Bedard's the hot one right now. I guarantee ask any kid on your team, their favorite player is Bedard. I did it yesterday. We had about, I think we've got 13 out of 15 players on our team had Connor Bedard as their favorite player. He was at North Shore Winter Club. They had access to ice all the time. You look at the players coming out of that program, they get open ice all the time. So I don't think that it's overdoing it by being on the ice a lot. It's overdoing it by sending it to trainers all the time. They got to get back on the ice, open up the rinks, let them get back on the ice, put a rink in the backyard, let them be out there all day. You'll never call them off that rink, but you'll definitely see it when they're getting overtrained. So for me, those are the two aspects from overtraining side.
My question was about the boom in private sessions. Oh, skills industry. Yeah, I think that, you know, when the skills sessions started, there was a need for them. And what really led to the kind of changeover where it became a big thing was that kids started working on things that they weren't getting in their team practices. And from my personal experiences with players, I've had NHL players tell me, you know, I've never been shown this before. I've never worked on this before. And because in their practices, they get the focus on winning, they get the focus on playing at a high level and doing things very well, but it's the intention of winning. And when the intention was changed to focus on their development and their improvement, it made them want to do more. And that's something that I think helped bridge the gap between you know, our side of things on the skill side and the coaching aspect was you know, working with the coaches to find out what they wanted their teams to do more of or what they wanted their teams to do better at. And when we can do that, their team started to see some success and develop, and it made a big difference for their overall season. And you know, as that started to happen, other teams started to go, oh, what was your team doing? And they started to buy in. So the need for it was something that I think came at a good time when players wanted to work on things and do some different areas of improvement. But I've had players tell me that, you know, a private session is like 10 practices because they just touch the puck a lot more and they get to do things a little differently. So those types of things are, for me, really good feedback because it helps me put together sessions for players that will benefit them. And when they feel like there's something they can work on and get better at, they want to do more of it. And as they want to do more of it, they bring their buddies. And as their buddies come, they bring more friends. And I think it just continues to grow.
Okay, guys, we're pretty much hitting our time here. So great answers on all those. Before we finish, are there any questions, any more questions from the floor? Pretty good job, people raising their hands and interjecting. Thanks for that. But I think these guys may hang around a few more minutes. I'll be around a few more minutes. So if there's any more questions on the skill development and development concepts and what we've kind of discussed here today, we'll be available. And I think just one thing to finish with, even though Peter's over my shoulder here, just with the Hockey Manitoba board, we've had a discussion and kind of an idea of a concept called the Player Experience Project. And I think it's really something interesting that we hope to evolve, and we're not there yet, but it's something we're looking at. It's kind of a piece of what Scott presented on, a piece of what Dean presented on, a lot of pieces of what we've been talking about to try help and support minor hockey associations, and really just having that goal of quality in practices and finding that right model to just create, just a consistent level of how we can practice from one arena in the city. If it's River Heights and we go over to Warren or up to Swan River, wherever it is, we can see very consistent, high quality practices being delivered with the same concept, same energy, and again, that word fun will be involved. And of course, by that being involved and having a better organization, just that minimal, simple things. We're not talking like full on, maybe like a Finnish model or a Swedish model where they essentially control everything. But ways to just try to enhance and help minor associations too. Again, we're a big spread out province, though it's easier said than done. But again, if there's thoughts, ideas that you guys have. That term comes up, reinventing the wheel. I think that's a challenge for associations. It's one regime's in for 4 years and they have this idea, and then the next group comes in or gets elected and they have this whole other idea, and it's just spinning tires a lot. And I think we really got to try to anchor down and just create more of a Manitoba model. And guys like this over here would be a big piece of coming up with those concepts and or even being on the ice to help deliver some of it as well. So really appreciate your time, guys. It's fun to get together again, and hopefully, like I said, if you can catch them for a few minutes before they get out, by all means do so. Peter, he's going up there.
Hey, thanks very much, guys. Really appreciate that, and showing us certainly the merits and benefits and values of skilled coaches and the importance of skill within our game of hockey. Appreciate Kyle taking the time to moderate this evening, and certainly to Riley, Dave, and John for coming out this evening and sharing their knowledge and expertise. So certainly really appreciate it. So thanks very much. I know the last little while it's been a little difficult there because they rolled the pizza out there, and the bar's going to be opening in a few minutes, so people became a little bit distracted. So I think it's a good opportunity now at the end of the night to to socialize a little bit and share some things and talk about what went on today, and certainly learn a little bit more from each other and share what you know about the game as well. We start tomorrow at 8:30 sharp. I expect everyone to be bright-eyed and bushy-tails, but really appreciate your patience, and thanks very much. Hope you had an enjoyable time today. Thank you.